thing I wanted to start with is kind of just defining what is marketing, because over the years, as you all are probably relatively familiar with, just in what you've seen, marketing has evolved, it has changed, and those evolutions have pretty much been kind of dependent upon, of course, your target market, who you're selling to. So not too long ago, it was basically one of those things where if you wanted to buy something, as you guys remember, you had to go to a store. A lot of times you would have to go to farmer markets to even get fresh produce, with the exception of what you can get at, your grocery stores and things like that. But over the last pretty much 2 decades, a lot of things have moved to digital. And that move to digital has been particularly true since COVID. So as you would expect, when you can't go into stores as much as you used to, we're all now on Zoom instead of, I'm sure you guys would rather be at a venue or a restaurant gathered together. With all things COVID, the digital world has just taken off a little bit more. So when we teach our students at UAB in particular, what's marketing, it pretty much breaks down into these 4 different buckets. So we call these the 4 Ps. So you have your product, and that goes not only into products, but also services. So what are you selling? But it's also the branding, the warranty. Where you buy it from is going to be your place. So those are going to be your trade channels. If you're buying it on Amazon, if you sell it in stores, and Starbucks is probably a good example of that. You can get their products at a lot of different places. You can get them at grocery stores. You can get them at Starbucks location, online. And then price. And the thing that's really important about price is it doesn't just take into consideration how much you're selling your product for. It also takes into consideration those discounts, the allowances, the credit terms, all the fees that are associated with paying via credit card. All that goes into your price. And then you have promotion. When most people say marketing, they only think of the promotion side. But technically, when it comes to marketing, all 4 of these things actually come into play. So marketing is a lot more vast than we tend to think of it. And the way that we pretty much try to look at this is there's a funnel for buying just about anything. And typically that's going to start with a need, like you realize that there's a need that you have, and therefore you're going to start researching who can actually meet this need. So what companies can meet this need. That's going to typically be in your discovery. And then you're going to create a list of about 2, 3, 4 different companies, and you're going to go and find some pro and con lists. And then ultimately you're going to get down here to making your purchase and then deciding, was that a good purchase or not? And then over time, if you have a lot of successful experiences, then you may become loyal to that brand. Apple is a great example of that. There's people that are very loyal to Apple. And honestly, it's because the switching cost is really high. If you were to try to go from Apple to a Google phone, and if you've ever tried to do that, you probably know how stressful that is. You have to learn an entirely new operating system. It can be very hard to get your contacts over from one device to the other. There's just so many things there that go into play that make it so that over time, if you're satisfied with that company, you're going to be more loyal to them. So there's a caveat here. Some things don't go through this process, like impulse buys. If you're in the grocery store and you decide to buy that Snickers or that York bar, you're not going to logically think through these steps. You're just going to buy it. So those are actually going to be outside of that funnel. But any major purchase, so whether you're purchasing a house or a car, or if you're purchasing, what I tell my students a lot, an apartment or a TV, you're going to typically go through this funnel. Even though you're not logically thinking about it, you're actually going through those steps. So keeping all that in mind, the way that we are looking at things now is more of an integrated approach. So there was a time when you could do billboards, and I know you guys are familiar with Alexander Chennault's face on every billboard, pretty much in the Southeast there for a while. So those billboards are great at being able to say, hey, look, here's what we have. So it meets that awareness phase. Here's who my company is. We can meet your needs, and this is the needs that we meet. But it really doesn't take you any further down that funnel. So typically what's going to happen nowadays is you see something on a billboard, and then you're going to typically go Google it. So you're going to go to a search engine and you're going to go try to find their website. And then once you get to their website, that's where you're going to go further down into that buying funnel. So all of these channels nowadays work together in what we basically now call integrated marketing. Now, honestly, we don't really talk about it like that in industry. We have an entire class named integrated marketing at UAB. In academia, it's called integrated marketing, but in industry, we just call it marketing today. So radio, billboards, emails, all the things I'm going to talk about today can combine to create basically what should be consistency with your brand message. And we used to say probably about 7 years ago that it takes about 7 to 10 times for someone to interact with your brand to see your message before they make a buying decision. And today, because of all the media we consume, because of how much media is available pretty much everywhere on your phone, social media, every website you go to, it now takes somewhere between 10 to 20 touch points. So you have to have your brand in front of someone 10 to 20 times before they start to even recognize your brand. And those are typically going to integrate from various different mediums. Does that make sense? Okay. So this is just a quote that I really like because we say this a lot in industry as well. But when it comes to marketing, it's really not simple math. And this is kind of a bad example, but you guys will understand it. So it's no longer 1 + 1 = 2. In marketing, those cumulative effects become multiplication. And so instead of 1 + 1 = 2, it's really, if you have these 2 marketing channels, you're seeing 3 times the effect or 4 times the effect. So it's a lot higher than just a simple, we're doing these multiple marketing things and none of them interact and intersect. If it's done well, and if it syncs with your sales team, all those marketing things should have consistency, and the consistency of that should be able to magnify the results that you get in from your marketing campaign. So you guys all know Geico. Do you remember their commercial? I think it was like a 15-minute call saves you 15% or less on car insurance. They still use that today because it's effective. And you would see that on billboards when they had ads for the Super Bowl on their websites. You can go to their Google ads, so the things that show up in search results, and you still see that same consistent message. You're going to see the gecko. You're going to always see the same consistency, and all that's really effective. So when I ask my students who aren't even paying for their own car insurance yet, do you know Geico? The answer is all yes. Okay. So all that is kind of what marketing is. It's a big picture. And then digital just plays a small role. So I created a couple of visuals for you guys to see what this means. When we say marketing advertising, all this comes into play. And a lot of people don't know this, but the sales department are almost always in the marketing department of every single college and university. Almost always. So my department is marketing, industrial distribution, and economics. Under marketing is where our sales program is. So it's a really big deal. Now, it's kind of cool to see academia do that because in industry, it's been very siloed. You've had sales and you've had marketing, and marketing was responsible for what we call filling the top of the funnel. So ultimately, it was responsible for getting people to have a broad awareness of your company via those billboards or those television ads or those radio ads. And today what we're seeing is marketing's owning more of that funnel. So almost always all the way down to pretty much the contact with that sales rep. So the sales rep used to come in as soon as the company or person was aware of a company, they would pick up a phone, they would call, and they'd be connected with the sales rep. Today in marketing, they go to the website, which is created by marketing, not by sales. A lot of times those chat bots are ran by the marketing team, not by sales teams. And then a lot of times all the content that's produced on that website, so your blogs, your podcasts, that's all marketing. And so by the time we get to your salesperson, they're almost ready to buy, and they just need that final push to get them to make that final decision. So with academia putting sales and marketing together, it makes perfect sense, but that's not how it was in industry at all until relatively recently, where they had to combine those. So sales is a huge part of marketing. Public relations, you guys are familiar with. That's your typical, getting you on the news, getting you in articles and journals, things like that. You have traditional marketing, which we're going to refer to really almost as the marketing collateral that were created. So the brochures that used to be used a lot to sell things, a lot of those have now been moved digital, almost all of them. Your white papers and spec sheets, even a lot of products we buy today, technically the manuals that come with them, a lot of them are now moving online. And so you don't even get a physical copy of how to use your TV. You get a QR code that says go online to look at it. So traditional marketing has all that stuff. Advertising, specifically looking at traditional advertising, That's going to be your radio, your billboard, your magazine, your newspaper, which, as we know, is kind of going to the wayside. All that stuff is going to be your traditional advertising. And then out of all these, you have the bubble for digital. So I like to tell people that because we have a lot of clients that'll come to us and say, we need to grow our business. We want to be on social media. And I'm like, social media is such a small piece of overall marketing that you can do great on social media, and it's not going to be enough if you're not doing all the other parts of digital marketing well, and then the entire other parts of marketing well. So again, if you don't have a great product, I can get people to come to your restaurant for the first time all day long. But if it's a bad restaurant, people aren't going to come back, as you guys are probably familiar with. So we have to have that conversation a lot. And so this is kind of how digital marketing breaks down. And this is where I'm going to spend the majority of the presentation, is walking through just what each of these are, because a lot of it is so new. When I got started in digital marketing unintentionally, just working a side job while putting myself through grad school back 14 years ago now, I was doing what is now called search engine optimization. But what I was really doing was writing descriptions on Bart Simpson pajamas for companies to put on their website to describe what these pajamas look like. That's how I got started. And now today it's vastly different. The things that have changed over time, evolved over time, Google has evolved over time. And honestly, when it comes to search engine optimization, Google owns pretty much all of it. They really do. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So we're going to cover each of these aspects just a little bit more in detail. Before we do, I think it's really important to clarify that in industry, and also sometimes in academia, there are people on each side of the digital versus traditional, and they're yelling at each other saying why theirs is better than the other. And honestly, and the reality is they need to just all be working together. So a lot of times digital marketing is going to say things like print's dead. And the reality is that's not true. So we can say what we want about billboards or Alex Shannara, but the reason most of us in the Southeast in particular know what the word personal injury lawyer even means is because of his billboards. I mean, it's just true. And so it's kind of genius. His marketing strategy is very genius, because if you get in a car wreck, there's probably, I mean, I don't really know the statistics, so I'm going to go against academia and make this up. There's probably like a 40% chance you're going to look up and see his face. Like you're going to look up and there's going to be Alex Shannara, and you know what you need to do immediately. It's crazy, but it's true. There's still very much a need for that and a role for that. When Shipt, the grocery delivery company, came into Birmingham, I don't know if you remember driving down 65 and there's a big billboard with a spaceship that said Shipt is coming. We didn't even know what Shipt was, but the way that that worked is the second ship got here and they started putting their billboards up saying what they do. We all were then like, oh, that's that billboard I've been driving by for 6 months. Now I know what this company is. So traditional marketing is still very effective, but it can't be used alone. Your website is the hub of your business. Unless you're the DMV where people have to come to you in order to keep driving cars, your website is the hub of your business. And people are, especially the younger generation, I can see a million Alex Shannara billboards, but I'm going to go online and I'm going to Google him. I'm going to look at the reviews. I'm going to go to his website. I'm going to see if he even knows what he's talking about. And I'm also going to see if there's a better option. So that's literally how younger generations work. And a lot of you guys do this too when it comes to picking restaurants and things like that. So you get it. And then on the right-hand side of things, you're going to hear traditional marketers scream at business to business companies. So companies that sell to other businesses, they don't need social media because we need our sales rep, and our sales rep needs to go be in that power plant, talking to the engineers and devising a solution on when they should have downtime. And the reality is that's not true anymore. And because of COVID, we all kind of see that because all that was shut down. And so we had virtual walkthroughs of power plants. We have virtual tablets where all those spec sheets that sales rep used to have to print out, they're now in this integrated CRM on your iPad, and you can take people through that. So the whole point is to say, one, I am adamant that we stop calling it digital marketing versus traditional. Today, it's just marketing. This is just what marketing looks like in 2022. And it's going to continue to evolve and it's going to continue to change. And so the dichotomy of these two just doesn't really help our industry. I just covered all of this the last thing I do want to point out is the very bottom. Where you are should depend on your target audience. So if your target audience is not on Facebook, you should not be on Facebook, because ultimately you have limited resources, time, money, energy, people that are actually going to be helping your company. And there's no sense in putting your advertising dollars and resources where your target audience is. So the way that I teach my students is we go back to the basics. What is your company? Who's your target audience? Let's create buyer personas in them. What's their name? Where do they work? Where do they spend their time online? And from there, we start determining where we're going to market our products. So it's going all the way back to those business basics. All right, so this is where I want to dive into those tactics. This part you guys are all going to be very familiar with. Ultimately, it's just websites. Websites are very important. The design elements change over time. How they're made changes over time. But typically, if you go to a website, there's some things that you're going to expect. You're going to expect to see their logo, and you're going to expect to see a menu at the top of the page that allows you to get to where you need to go on that website. Otherwise, it all just comes to varies depending on what year it is, what design tactics are being used, if people are using white background versus dark backgrounds. And none of that really matters, and Google doesn't really care about it. What they really care about is, does your website do a good job of communicating what your target audience expects to see when they go there? So I'm not going to cover this too much in detail because you guys are very familiar with websites. So this is where things get just a little bit more technical, and I kind of want to talk through it because it's really important. I'm not going to get too much into the weeds on it, but the best way to explain it is every single website has what is ultimately called a domain authority. And the really easy way to think of that is it's a trust factor. How much do search engines, when I say search engines, I almost always mean Google, because they literally rule the world when it comes to this. How much does Google trust your website? So this is the best example to explain it. Let's say that you go to your favorite restaurant every single day for 3 weeks. And every time that you go to that restaurant, the doors are closed. There's not a sign on the door. The doors are just closed. All the lights are off and all the chairs are on the table. Eventually, you're going to stop going back, right? Like you're going to be like, okay, they are obviously closed. Websites are the exact same way. So Google has these computers. They call them bots for some reason. I still don't know why. They have these computers that go out and they basically check every single website on some kind of consistent schedule. And if they go to that website and the website's not functioning properly, then they're going to reduce your trust factor, which means when somebody goes and Google's best restaurant in Birmingham, Alabama, they're not going to show up anymore. Even if they were the top restaurant for decades, Google's going to be like, these guys may be closed. I don't trust them anymore. So one of the ways to help your website show up in those search engines is basically just called search engine optimization. It's almost always referred to in industry as SEO. And it's kind of broken down into two elements. One is what happens on your website. So going into my website, making actual changes, that's on-site SEO. And then the other we're going to cover in a minute is more things that happen off your website. And those two factors, they all come together in some algorithm that Google will not share with us because they like to hold their thoughts secret to determine who ranks where on the search pages over time. So these are all technical things that don't matter, but I just do want you to see one part of it. You guys have all seen this before. You've seen what search results look like. This is a title. It's called a title tag. And I can go into the back end of my website and I tell Google what I want that to say. So that's not auto-populated in. So search facts, all SEO, and building great websites. If you go to this website, those words do not even have to be on their website. So that is all the code in the back end of the website telling Google, that's what I want to show up as my title in search engines. It is super important, very important. And then the second part is the same thing, kind of, but it's called the meta description. So we have meta title and meta description. It's the exact same thing. I'm telling Google what I want to show up as a description of my business for each page of my website. And again, this is likely not on their website at all. It's all in the back end. It's technically in the code. So I'm telling Google, put this as my page title and put this as my description. So when I share my website on social media platforms, so Facebook, LinkedIn, this is the title that's going to pull up and also the description that pulls up. So it's basically the way that marketers can say, this is how we want to show up when our website's shared. That makes sense? No, it's a little bit technical. Okay. And that is technically on-site optimization because it's things that you can do to your actual website that affects your Google search results. Then you have offsite. So offsite search engine optimization is anything that happens off your website. So this can be links, for example, from AL.com or Wall Street Journal back to your website. Those links are very powerful, especially if you have a link from something like the Wall Street Journal or NPR or some other reputable source. And then you're going to have social media. What happens on social media actually is really important. That's all, if it's a public page for your business on Facebook and Instagram, actually, and Twitter and Reddit, Google's crawling that, and they're going to find out information about your company. So again, if you're not on social media, Google's going to question, are you legitimate? Are you a real company? Because if you're a real company, we would expect you to be on social media on one of these platforms. So both of those things combined. And also it looks like this. You've seen these before. You go to Google, you look on your map, you try to find out where you want to go. These are local listings. So this is basically, if I am Sir and West, I have this thing called a Google My Business profile. I go in, I update my hours. You guys saw this a lot during COVID when you're trying to figure out what's closed, what's open, what has outdoor seating, what's taking reservations, who's doing takeout. That is all just manually managed in the back end of a dashboard. So the issue is if Sir and West, and I've seen this before, I'm tempted if I want to tell you guys the restaurant because I know you've heard of it. I'll tell you. So about 6 years ago, Nikki's West did not have anyone, the one downtown, didn't have anyone managing their profile. And so this lady walks into the bathroom and she takes a selfie of herself in the bathroom. And that was the only picture that Google had where someone had tagged themselves in social media at being at Nikki's West. And that was a picture that showed up for their company. So like when you Google Nikki's West, there's literally a picture of a lady in the bathroom taking a selfie. So it is so important that companies come and claim these profiles and actually manage them themselves, because if they don't, Google is going to go find whatever it can and it's going to make the profile for you. And then you're kind of left with stuff like that happening. And there have been some lawsuits around it too, just with, it's way too technical, but companies they'll decide that they're going to be open on Sundays that they used to be closed. And Google sees that they're closed in all these directories. So like Yelp, technically Yellow Pages back when that was a thing, other websites, and they would keep changing their hours on Google to go back to saying they're closed on Sundays when they were actually open. And so there's just been a lot of issues here about Google controlling people's online presence and literally affecting their business. Because again, Google trusts what they find on the internet, sometimes even over people that run the business. So it's just crazy. But the reason I keep saying Google is because of this. 94% of all organic traffic, and when I say organic, I mean not advertisements, 94% comes from Google.
Whoa.
Google owns search engines. Like they just truly do. They really do. And so that's why we talk about Google. That's why everyone in marketing tries to see what Google wants from us, because this is the reality of what we're dealing with. So it's a big problem. I'm actually surprised it's legal, but that's beside the point. And then the thing that I think is also important here is to understand that in marketing, we know this, but search engine optimization is really hard. It takes a lot of time, energy, and effort. And so 61% of marketers, and these are like in big Fortune 500 companies, say that this is a huge priority of them, especially COVID. I just read an article today from some search engine journal, I don't really remember which one, that was talking about how companies invested more in search engine optimization because of COVID than they ever had. Because you had to. If you didn't show up in search, you're missing out on all that business. All right, social media marketing. Oh, social media marketing. We all kind of have a love-hate relationship with social media marketing. I personally am really tired of social media, but I have to do it for company. So I do it for work. I pretty much stay off of it in my spare time. On the other hand, my students, I think, spend probably 5 to 6 hours a day on social media. Like the amount, it's a problem. I just think that there's a massive cultural issue here around social media that is honestly getting worse instead of better. And so it's a massive concern. However, there's no doubt that you can actually use social media to grow your business and to build your brand. And it's actually incredibly effective. I was telling someone the other day, it's kind of creepy how specific you can advertise to people. So I can go onto Facebook and I can create an ad and only show it to people who have friends that are male that have a birthday in the next 7 days. I can show ads to people who live within 1 mile radius of a certain building who also drive a BMW. I can even specify whether it's a new or used BMW. The ability to target on Facebook is insane. And you guys are probably not, you've heard about this for sure. This is why when the political election that came around, Facebook was such a big deal, is because they were able to target so specifically individuals based on everything from their personality to their behaviors to where they spend their time online to other pages that they follow on Facebook to who they were likely voting for to whether or not they were Democrat, Republican, or an independent. So what really that means is Facebook purchased this data from someone about who in this country is registered for each party. And they put that into their platform and they let people advertise on it. Yeah, it's creepy. It should be illegal. Like, I'm just going to fully name that. It should be illegal. However, it's not. And one of the reasons it isn't, which it very well may be in the next 10 years, is just because this stuff has all came about and has changed so quickly. And the reality is, and if you've watched any of the time when Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook was in front of Congress, you have Mark Zuckerberg, who is kind of a robot but he's very much a genius. And he understands the insides and outsides of Facebook and social media marketing and everything very well. But he has zero ability to communicate on a level where other people can understand him, which tends to happen with really smart people, right? And he's talking to people who don't actually use the platform a whole lot. So there's no way to have communication here that actually creates policies that actually protect people. And so until we have some ability to completely understand what's going on and create better policies, it's just kind of where we're at. They're going to continue to get away with allowing ridiculously intrusive advertising, like very much so. But social media, this is kind of what this looks like. I just wanted to show you examples in case you haven't seen them. On the left-hand side, you just have a Facebook ad. Technically, this is called a carousel ad. And you're going to see that these are typically from pages that are verified and they're going to have very quick description. You're limited on how much text you can put there. That's why you almost always see that they're very short. And then you're going to have typically your picture, your headline, and some kind of call to action. On the right-hand side, this is just an example of what they may look like in Instagram. And the reason these ads are very important in Instagram is you can't add links to your post, but notice here, there's a shop now button, which is actually a link. So if I click on that, it'll take me to that company's website. And if I'm just posting without putting money behind it on Instagram, I can't add that link. So yeah, and Facebook owns Instagram. So all the advertising things I just said about Facebook is true about Instagram, and it's actually all ran in the back end of Facebook. So if you want to run an ad on Instagram, you have to do it through Facebook. Yeah. And then there's a lot of other social platforms that I'm not going to mention just because, yeah, there's just a lot of them. I think this is important. Facebook is the second most used platform globally. And I always want, besides YouTube, and I always want to point that out just because, like, this isn't just a United States thing. Now, granted, other countries have a lot more rigidness in terms of what you can do and see on Facebook. But regardless, worldwide, second most used platform online is Facebook. Just crazy. And then 46% of Americans check their smartphones before getting to bed every single night. I would be shocked if that number is not higher after COVID, but those are the most recent stats. People are on their phone before getting out of bed. When they get into bed, they're checking their phone. And if you guys, all of you probably have kids or grandkids, and you know that to be true. And the next thing I want to talk about are search engine ads. And ultimately, I just kind of want to show you what that looks like. They look like these. You go to Google, you search for something, these ads pop up. Google's nice enough to put this little button here or this little disclaimer that says this is an ad. If you click on these, regardless of where you click, you're basically going to charge that company for that click. So how much it costs for each click is going to vary depending on industry. I have a personal injury lawyer client, not Alex Shannara, that actually pays somewhere between $75 to $100 per click. Very high. However, if he wins a case, it doesn't matter because he makes way more than that money back in that personal injury case. So that makes sense. Now, is Wayfair and these other companies I've never heard of, are they paying $75 a click? Absolutely not. It's going to completely vary depending upon the industry. And if you're selling an office chair, that cost per click is going to be a lot lower. The other interesting thing that I always want to point out is for some reason, Google ads are more expensive in Alabama than most other states. I have no reason to tell you why that's true. It sounds insane to me, but it is. For some reason, they're more expensive in Alabama than other states. And then on the right-hand side, these are just called shopping ads. And so what this looks like in the back end of Google is you say where you want to put your ads, and then you create your ads. That's all this is. And so these things are paid ads. Anything that shows up below this in search engine tends to be referred to as organic, which means they're not paid. And that's where search engine optimization comes in. So with these ads, it's pay to play. You stop paying, you stop showing up. So we don't refer to that as search engine optimization. Any questions on that super technical stuff yet? The rest of this is a little bit less technical. Okay. I think Kathy scared you guys to saving on to the end. All right. So these are display ads or banner ads. I just call them billboards of the internet. You guys have seen these regardless of what website you've been on. If you go to the Wall Street Journal, you're going to see that these are, it's actually kind of interesting that they call them banner ads, because it used to be that these only would be at the very top, like a banner across the top of the website. And that's why they're called banner ads. But today they can be anywhere. They could be in the middle of your content. They can be on the right-hand column. It's very, very popular for them to be there. And you're going to typically notice, I don't have a screenshot of it here. There tends to be like a little triangle on the top of each of these ads. And that basically tells you it's an ad. So it's saying this is being pulled in from the Google Display Network. So if you've gone online to find a recipe, and I'm sure you guys have seen how annoying it is. You have to scroll to the very bottom of the page to find the actual ingredients and the instructions to the recipe. That's all because all the ads above is how they're really getting paid. So they're getting money to keep you on that page long enough to get you to the bottom of the page. And so that's kind of how that works. And then we have website retargeting. And this is actually probably one of my favorite digital marketing tools, just because it's so cheap. It makes your company look so much bigger than it actually is. And with the way that our brains work, biologically speaking, it's incredibly effective. So if I go to someone's website, let's say I go to Amazon even, and I'm trying to buy, we'll just go with new office chair. And then when I get to Amazon and I see this new office chair and I pull it up and I really like it, but I decide not to buy it. I may add it to my cart, or I may just decide not to buy it. I decide to leave the Amazon completely. Maybe I got pulled into a work meeting, or maybe my kid started crying and needed me to come take care of her. Whatever reason it is, I leave Amazon without buying that chair. That chair then starts showing up on every single other website I go to. It starts showing up on social media. I start getting email ads about it. It is incredibly effective. And a lot of people don't know how it works. And so they think, wow, Amazon, well, which Amazon does, but the small company has this massive marketing budget. And it's really not. There's just a cookie on your computer that is following you around everywhere you go. It's across devices. So I have literally been at my phone before, which this is a whole different issue that should be illegal. I've been at my phone talking about an essential oil diffuser and how I wanted to go to Amazon to see if I can find one. I walk into my office and get on my laptop, pull up Amazon, and that diffuser is right there. And that's just because your phones are listening to you. There's no laws against it. Facebook is listening to you. Your Echo Dots, all of that's listening to you. Your Nest thermostats, it's all recording you. which a lot of people get freaked out about. I think it's an invasion of privacy, but I'm not saying anything that I care if anyone hears or is surely nearly as interesting enough for them to actually care about. However, the whole point is, again, there's no laws and rules around that. But the reason this is so effective is because your brain cannot ignore it. So if I got you all right now, which I'm not going to do, I do make my students do this, to go to a website that I know runs retargeting. It's a company you've never heard of. And I get you to spend 2 minutes on that website. I guarantee you, not only will those ads pop up in front of you everywhere you go, but your brain can't ignore it anymore because you paid attention to it. And so now that logo, every time it pops up, your brain sees it, notices it, and recognizes it. That's why it's so effective. It's very, very effective. And again, that's biological. So it's not something you have any control over, unfortunately. And then you have content. There we go. Then you have content. This is graphics, word, videos, any type of information that you're putting out there. So this is no different than writing a really good news article. It's just online now. And going back to blogs, a lot of people are like, why does my website need a blog? Again, going back to that restaurant example, if Google comes to your website and it's completely the same, nothing ever changes, they wonder if you still exist. One of the ways to update your website consistently is via a blog. Just posting a blog once a week to let Google know you're still there. And it also gives you things to share on social media. So content is incredibly important. We now we being consumers, expect to be educated. And the best way to educate them is through content. Because again, they're not coming to you until they're ready to buy most of the time, if you're a business. And so all the things that you used to cover face-to-face, you no longer cover. All the things you used to have when it comes to the brochures that we used to get in the mail all the time, that's not really how that works anymore. So it all goes back to content. Email marketing, you guys have seen this. But I really just want to point out here is there's a lot of it that's automated now. And so if you go to Amazon, you put something in your cart, but you don't check out, you'll get an automated email saying, hey, you forgot to buy this. That's all just automating scripts. So it's not even artificial intelligence. It's literally just scripting. If this happens, then send this email. If they don't open this email, then send this other email. It's just a series of if-then statements to decide who gets email sent to them and when. So you guys have seen probably a lot of the automated email marketings. And a lot of times it can be customized. So it can be like, Don Long, comma, insert a lot of information. They didn't write that out to you. It's all just scripted. They just inserted your name. And so there's like a way where you take your email list and insert those names. And this I really don't want to spend too much time talking about, but influencer marketing and user-generated content is a big deal. All this really means, and this is why all the college students are interested in digital marketing now, is because of these guys. So I'm thankful for that. But it's just simply what we used to have as I can't think of the guy's name. I think it was Denzel Washington, but he was wearing an Under Armour outfit in one of the movies. It's literally just like that, but on social media. So you're going to have influencers, people that are well known in whatever industry. They're going to be holding, now we have a box of Special K because we're not doing television ads anymore. We're just going to give it to this chick that everybody knows. I have no clue who this chick is, by the way. We're going to give this girl that all the young people know, and we're going to try to get them to eat more Special K. And so here's pretty much what this looks like. They do legally now have to say it's an ad. I don't know how they're enforcing that policy. I have no clue, but technically the influencers now have to say that, and they have to note that there's a paid partnership with, and I'm sure you guys have probably heard about this with the NCAA things that have been going on. They now are allowed to, student athletes are now allowed to market themselves. So the name, image, and likeness change. We're going to see a lot more of this. We're going to see those kids that are playing on Saturdays having brand sponsorships. Like this is something that's not going to go away anytime in the near future. It's a really big deal. And then we have online PR, and this is something else I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about, but basically, all right. Basically what this is everything public relation wise that used to happen offline now happens online. So where you used to say, hey, I want to be in the Birmingham Business Journal print edition. Can you please put me in there? Can you write a story about me? Now it's, can you put me online in the BBJ? So same thing, just online, typically news articles, events, all that stuff. And now it's even like you can sponsor Zooms, like you can sponsor a Zoom conference. It's just crazy. Here's some other stuff that's out there. I am not going to go into any of these too much in detail. I just think that's important to note that marketing automation is a big deal and it's going to continue to be a big deal. And companies, especially the larger companies, have started to, even need to optimize what happens if you asked Alexa for something. So if I say, Alexa, what are the top restaurants in Birmingham? Alexa doesn't just go to Google and pull up that list. That's a whole different thing that your company has to optimize for in order to be in that like list from Siri or list from Alexa. And that's why a lot of times you're only going to see bigger companies when that happens. Now, if you ask Siri, she's probably going to default to, I don't know the answer, and she's going to send you to a Google search result page. But if you ask Alexa, she's either going to tell you she doesn't know the answer, or she's going to give you like, there's a McDonald's down the road. Like it's going to be a really big company that's invested in this type of stuff. We're going to see smaller companies adopt that because it's just going to be easier to optimize your website. It's just going to be part of what you do. But for right now, it's just very up in the air for larger companies. In geofencing, you can pretty much put a fence around any geographic area and say if the person's cell phone enters that fence, you start showing ads. A lot of personal injury lawyers use that for hospitals, which is pretty much ambulance chasing. Like literally it's the same thing, but that's how it works. And then I just want to spend a couple of minutes and then I'll stop for questions because I realize it's 10:45 on what this kind of looks like teaching. So like, what are we teaching our students when it comes to digital marketing? Right now, I have a lot of client projects and so do some of my colleagues. So right now, one of them is designing a website for a nonprofit. So we have a nonprofit that can't afford to buy a website. My students are getting the experience of designing it. Now, is it going to be like a $50,000 website? No, not even close. However, they're getting experience and the nonprofit's getting a new website. Social media calendars and ads, that's really big. They are doing some search engine optimization. So taking that content, implementing keywords, changing those titles and descriptions, and then actual social media content. So creating posts for people to put in social media. So right now we have 5 clients and just in my class, and this is what we're working on in those classes. So they're getting real tangible experience. I know I don't do tests. I don't think tests, well, actually science proves tests are not indicative actually of learning. It's just like that short-term memory. So I don't do tests. I have them do projects, and they're typically group projects because that's what they're going to be working in the real world. And they're typically client projects. So they have a realistic aspect. We also do in my integrated marketing class, this is where they have to actually take those 4 P's of marketing and implement them. So for example, they choose a company. One company chose Tesla and they decided that the product, they have to create a new product that doesn't exist. The product they decided they were going to create was basically a Roomba vacuum before your lawn. So you put this basically, honestly, lawnmower that's automated and that is solar powered on your lawn, you push go and your lawn gets cut by this Roomba vacuum / Tesla model. So from there, they basically have to decide, okay, who's going to buy this? What does that person look like? So they create buyer personas, they create messaging maps. And this is literally stuff that ends up being put on websites or in social media profiles. They create marketing channels. They decide where they're going to sell it. Is it only going to be sold online? Probably it's Tesla. That makes sense. And then they create campaigns and determine how they're going to track return on investment. So to the best of their ability, I get them to go figure out how much is it going to cost to make this? How much am I going to have to sell it for? So it's a comprehensive project where they literally, as a group, throughout the duration of the semester, they go from the start to the finish of all marketing. And they have to tell me like where they're going to market on social media and things like that too. And then we're doing a lot of certifications. Those Google ads, there's a free certification that students can get for that. It's huge on resumes. It's one of the ways to get them hired. Social media marketing certificates and inbound marketing. So this isn't like product management or project management. We don't have a PMI exam that you can go take. And taking that exam in PMI means that, you're qualified across all project management jobs. We don't have that in digital marketing because it's such a new field and such a new industry. And so instead we have these supplemental certifications that in industry we recognize. Like if someone had a Google ad certification, everyone in industry is going to know what that is. but we don't have like just a single certification for everything, if that makes sense. And then I just wanted to like quickly cover in the next 3 minutes, and I'll open up for questions. The couple of things that we have going on at UAB, they're just really awesome. So we are actually creating a behavioral marketing lab where we're going to be setting up eye tracking and emotional reactions and body sensors. So practically, what does that mean? I can show a student in our lab a Super Bowl ad. I can see where they look at the ad at what second. So exactly what they're looking at. By looking at all these different facial expression monitors, it ultimately looks at every single facial expression that you make and how you move your face while you're looking at these things. We can tie what they're looking at to their actual emotional reaction. So we can see if they're feeling anxious, if they seem like that they are feeling a little bit stressed, or if they seem like they're having empathy and connecting with the story. And then we have body sensors set up where we can actually dictate or be able to see at those exact moments. So if I'm looking at the specific spot of the specific ad at the specific second, what is my heart rate? What is my oxygen level? Are those things going up or down? So that's just really cool, like to be able to get our students in the labs. As academics, we're going to have a lot of research opportunity, but for the students to have hands-on experience with things that this is going to be in every marketing agency in 10 years. Every marketing agency is going to have this in 10 years. But right now, our students don't have that. And we can actually use it to screen which ads are going to be effective before they ever go out. And we're going to do the same thing with resumes. So people that are hiring our students, what are they looking at? What parts are the most important? And then we're going to create at some point, which we're kind of doing that a little bit now, basically a student marketing agency. So people in Birmingham, mostly smaller businesses and nonprofits, can come have our students for either free or super inexpensively work in marketing for them for the semester. So again, tangible experience for our students. I will be more than likely the one that's overseeing this. So I've ran an agency before. They'll have leadership and guidance, and then they leave us with things that they can actually put on their resume instead of just, hey, I took these classes. All right, any questions?
Is there a overkill factor that they watch for? And by that, I mean that just before the pandemic hit, I was on jury duty, and the lawyers for the plaintiff asked us if we had watched TV and if we had ever seen any ads for lawyers, in particular Shannara, and our reaction to those.
Yeah.
And a significant number of people on there said not only had they watched them, but they despised them. Obviously, that got you off jury duty because they were from the Shannara firm. I myself hate the personal injury and the disability ads on TV. They're just incessant. And there's got to be some malignant motive for that, usually dirty lucre. So did any of these companies ever worry about overkill?
I wish they did. So when it comes, again, I have a personal injury client. It's not Alex Shannara. When it comes to, well, this is literally how it works. Who can afford that commercial more? A personal injury attorney or a coffee shop down the street? And it all just goes back to the money. And so, and I'll say this as tactfully as I can, I think that personal injury lawyers in particular, based on the ones that I've known, tend to really have a massive competition against each other. Like you can drive down 65 and you can see one company will say size matters, and the next company right after them is going to have a billboard that says experience matters. Like there's just so much competition there that I think that their egos get into the way of really caring too much about that. But with that being said, yes, I think it's a big issue. Me personally, and this is actually not my client, so I'm speaking a little off kilter here, but Hare Wynn Law Firm is one of the firms that I actually have the most respect for because I don't see their stuff everywhere all the time. And it doesn't look like they're going after people in a sleazy way. And so I think that is very important. And I think, especially with the younger generations, with millennials and with Gen Z, like we're very aware of that kind of stuff. Like Alex Shannara's face on every billboard is annoying. Like it just factually is. But if you've if you notice lately, that's not really there that much anymore. It's just not. And the other thing is the younger generation rarely watches TV. And so we don't see those commercials like pretty much at all because we're streaming everything. And fortunately or unfortunately, whichever one you want to look at it, personal injury lawyers haven't gotten into a whole lot of advertisements on Hulu and a whole lot of advertisements on even YouTube and things like that. So we haven't been nearly as blasted with it as if you're just watching, broadcast TV.
Yet.
It's going to happen because again, they have more money. And if they offer Facebook or Hulu or whoever so much money, then they're going to it's what's going to happen.
Is Alibaba the biggest company?
Yeah. In China, it's nuts. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And I don't think most people in the United States even know it exists. But the power that company has is absolutely crazy.
How much has something like Brave impacted advertising or websites that stop pop-ups?
Okay. Can you rephrase your question? I think I missed the first part of it.
Okay, there's a web, what would you call it? It'd be like Chrome, except the name of it is Brave, and it cuts out advertisements.
Yeah, so it does, but the reality is that it doesn't have all the data that Google does. And so the quality results you get is not going to be nearly as sufficient. So our ad blockers, on the other hand, almost all of my students use ad blockers. And it'll block some things, like it'll block those billboards of the internet, but it does not block, like if you're on Facebook and someone has put an ad in your newsfeed, it doesn't block stuff like that. It just literally is designed to block those banner ads and those display ads.
What's the best ad blocker?
I don't know. I can research that for you. I can't block ads because I actually have to see my clients' ads. It's actually really annoying to make sure they're running and working, but I could actually find that out for you. I have an entire class of students that will be able to answer that for you all.
Good. Please do.
I'll send that via Dawn. That's a great question.
Any more questions from anyone? Nichole, thank you so much for a great presentation. We're all in your debt, and perhaps if sometime you would like to come back and tell us more, we'll be glad to have you. Everyone, thanks for joining us this morning. We'll be back on Friday. Visit us on Monday for the Monday forum. We'd love to see you there. Thanks and have a great day.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.